we all know that it's been an incredibly difficult time in everyone's life, and something that I've come to conclude is that this is the first time that in a very, 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 very long time that collectively all therapists are trying to fix crises on daily bases while going through the same crisis themselves. And so I would like to open up the floor to you guys about any thoughts on, again, mental health for mental health professionals, like what comes to mind.
Um, Kind of just to piggyback on what you were discussing yesterday, in terms of like learning other aspects of the counseling field. I think another part that they should focus on in schools is the importance of self-care. The importance of being mindful of a lot of things as well too. I don't think they focus on that enough for the therapists themselves. I think they teach us to focus on it more for teaching that to our clients rather than ourselves. So I think that that's something that's very important.
I totally agree. It's funny because the other day it wasn't a client, but it was just I think it was like my dad or something. He was like, "Do therapists get therapy as well?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I think I've only been to therapy once, but I feel like I need to go back just because of how much we deal with on a daily basis with our clients. I feel like it's necessary for us, not necessarily like to share everything, obviously, but it's important for us to be able to express our feelings and also what we go through as well. And it's great that, I have like colleagues in the field like Courtney and Brittany and, everyone to kind of like, so when I talk to Courtney, sometimes it's like, oh, like you're going through the same thing I'm going through, so it's good to be able to communicate those stuff. But I feel like when it comes to self-care, like I didn't realize how much important self-care was until I started this internship. And being able to find that balance between interning in school and personal things, like it's extremely crucial because there was a moment where I literally had a breakdown at work because I was just super overwhelmed with everything. And I feel like, if once I do find a therapist I think it's important to like to go to therapy because it's a lot that we can't, discuss with like family and everything. Like we need somebody who doesn't know us to be able to communicate things. So yeah, that's my take on it.
I have to agree with everything that Courtney and Guzzy just mentioned about the importance of both self-care as well as being able to release and express yourself and what you need throughout the process. And another thing we're learning in our at least I'm learning in my concentration in crisis and trauma is also kind of like a further step of the impacts of this lack of self-care, which would be that a lot of therapists, it sounds like face, especially through the learning process. But the vicarious trauma or the secondary stress exposure, and how that can kind of impact a therapist. So that can lead to decreased empathy or decreased sense of satisfaction in the therapist's work themselves, and that can lead to burnout, compassion fatigue, a lot of different things that can really impact your work. So I think it's kind of also leading off of what Courtney and Ngazi said, focusing on that self-care piece, focusing on what you need as a human. You're still a human, even though you're in a caring profession and you're a caring professional. So focusing on your needs and how important that really is. And like Courtney and Ngazi mentioned, different ways to do that and what's most beneficial for you.
I have to say, I definitely agree with all of you guys. We're always, preaching self-care, self-care, self-care to our clients. It even actually says it in our ethics. I have it right here printed out. I think it's, let me tell you guys in case you want to look it up. It looks like it's page 2 or 3. But essentially, and I think that's, it's not that it's necessarily new to the ethics, but I know that they've added since the last time they revised the ethics. So yeah, you're definitely right, Courtney. It's not really taught in school. And yes, I am an LMSW, but I'm not too much further ahead of you guys. I also graduated in the pandemic. I graduated back in November. And then I studied for my LMSW and I went to work like 2 weeks later. So I just like went straight from grad school to working in a crisis. And I was at another job and then I was here. So I'm a rambler though, sorry guys, but essentially I'm just adding to the fact that yes, it is very important. And Brittany, you brought up a really powerful point that I liked and that I want to highlight, that if we don't take care of ourselves, it really does decrease our lack of empathy, because it's sort of like we're so engulfed in our own problems that we are just like, oh, well, who cares about Brittany's problems? Not that we think that way, but sometimes I can feel that way when you're like beginning to get burnt out. And then, empathy is such a key part of what we do. So that leads me to my next question. What do you guys believe is your best way or favorite way to take care of yourselves?
I think like for me, like for self-care is so important. I always like give me something to expect for the weekend. So um I would like, for example, like I have movie night, like it's like a routine thing, like on the weekend. So I can expect to like meet my friends, we can talk and also watch a movie. So it's time to enjoy our lives. So I know there's a space for me to relax and to talk like on the weekends. So I know this is some place that is safe for me to do self-care and to connect. And on the other way, I think like if I have a very heavy session, I need to give myself like a brief break to actually get out of the mood and everything, so I can like refresh my mind before I actually enter another kind of session. So I need to be aware, like if any kind of those symptoms actually come out, like to show that I may have the burnout or any compassion fatigue. I think like I would do additional like self-care. And also like I think like counselors often feel there's maybe some guilty and also stigma to actually visiting like professional counselor. But actually I think it's like everyone needs to find a counselor to actually to improve their mental wellness and actually maintain their mental wellness. So I do feel that there's no shame around it. So if I do need one, I feel like I want to like explore myself, or so like I want to help myself out of those symptoms. So yeah, I will find a counselor too.
Shall I appreciate your input? And you said a really important word. In our profession, where there is a lot of uncertainty, there is a lot of, we have a schedule, but then it gets changed because there's a crisis or whatnot. It's important that in our own personal lives that we implement a routine. So for you, you mentioned you love watching movies, which is awesome. But definitely, I'd like to offer the opportunity for or the opportunity of the idea to go to therapy, therapy also offers us routine, and it feels like, okay, every Thursday I got my therapist and I can just pour out all of my feelings. um, what are your guys' thoughts on what Xiao said?
I completely agree with her. One way of self-care that I did was kind of watch movies too, find something new on Netflix to see. I realized that I need to take the time to give myself a good night's rest, um, because with working, full time and everything, and then dealing with clients and stuff, like there's days where I'm drained, I'm tired, and on the weekends, like I know, like my Monday through Friday, I'm pretty much working. Like that's just what's gonna happen. And so on the weekends, I try to at least sleep in and see some family, see positive people that I know that's gonna bring me like joy and happiness. And sorry about that. but yeah, that's a way of self-care that I do. And again, when it comes to seeing a therapist, it's something that I do want to get back into. Um, and also another thing that I like to do is kind of just taking walks, even if it's like for 30 minutes or so, just being able to go outside and get that fresh air and kind of like release any energy or whatever that I'm feeling. So yeah, that's my take. So thank you, Sia, for that. And I agree with the whole therapist because it's something I need to do.
I'm wondering, from a therapist perspective, in Ngazi, what do you think are the barriers to therapists themselves seeking out help?
Um, that's a great question. Um, I don't know. I never really thought about that. I'm not sure. I think I don't even know how to answer that, to be honest. I just think at the end of the day that therapists need therapists as well. So that's pretty much what it comes down to.
That's okay. A couple of things, just kind of based on my experience as well as what I've read in articles, is that like, again, I'm not that much further ahead of you guys, but I, for instance, in graduate school, I was on like a Medicaid program myself, and so therapy was not as accessible. So I think that's one part of the issue, is that in these therapist graduate programs, they're so intensive, but then they don't always offer the best insurance to make it accessible. So I think that's one barrier. And then as well, if you're switching jobs. So I probably switched from like internship to job in the span of 6 months. So my insurance was very uncertain. And with that uncertainty, I was like, well, I don't want to invest in a therapist, pour out my heart, change insurances, and then have to do it all over again. So, Brittany, you look like you have some thoughts on that.
I would definitely have to agree that those are two pretty big barriers, especially having done the search for a therapist on my own. When I started the program, before starting the position, I decided that it would be a good idea to get back into counseling, just in case, like, I experienced different emotions related to what I was facing. And the insurance was definitely a struggle, but also kind of the accessibility to a professional that can meet the needs you're looking for. So depending on, like, say you've had trauma, so maybe you need a trauma-based special, like a somebody who specializes in trauma, or there's, if you know, and another thing can be some professionals know what works best for them, and if you're looking for a specific technique that a therapist may not use, that can also get really tricky depending on what you're looking for and what your needs are.
I like that word, Brittany, that you used, the word needs. It sounds kind of basic, but in actuality, it means a lot. Very similar to, how we have a specific hairstylist, a specific nail technician, a specific, gynecologist, all these things. Same thing for a therapist. It's like we got to shop around, really based on the problems you're finding you're having. They may specialize in it, they may not. If you say work with a therapist, it also sometimes can take a while for you to feel out if you are a good fit, and then that kind of can create barriers as well, because now you're spending time, spending money. Courtney, I'm wondering if you have anything you'd like to add to the current topic.
Yeah, definitely. Just to piggyback off this question in terms of like barriers, for people talking, I think at times we can be our own barrier. I guess because we have like that thought that we have to be strong for everyone around us. We have to be strong for our clients, that sort of thing. Like we're not supposed to break down. Um, I think that yeah, we stop ourselves sometimes from seeking the assistance that we need, even if it's not something that's like a crazy situation or something like so mind blowing where we have to see someone. But sometimes it's just good to have someone there to listen, just for us to vent and release some of the stress that we might be going through. So, yeah, I definitely agree. And then in terms of my ways of self care, I used to focus a lot on. Of course, like getting my nails and hair done, that sort of thing. But now I've found a lot more interest in um, just being present in the moment and just making sure that I focus on my breathing, just taking the time, like even if it's like 10 to 15 minutes, like to myself, like I just need that. And that's what's very helpful.
That's interesting, Courtney, that you said we are our own barriers sometimes. So I've kind of touched on like the systematic barriers, but sometimes it is within. Um, I'm curious with you guys. Have you guys ever, worked with clients where they said, "My last therapist, it didn't work out, so I don't believe in therapy." Have you guys ever maybe felt that way yourselves? If you like had any, we're not that we're bashing any of our therapists, but wondering if you guys have ever had any challenging experiences with therapy that, in a client's perspective, may make it difficult to maybe want to come back to therapy.
For me, like I mentioned before, I've only done therapy once, and it was okay. I'm not gonna say she was a bad therapist or anything like that, but um, I actually have had a client who, and I still see this, who pretty much has gone through 17 therapists, and I was like his last resort. So he's like, as when we were doing the intake and everything, he expressed like how much therapist he went through, and he's like, the last one just didn't work out for me. And he's like, I really hope that, I can have a connection with you. So luckily things are going well because he's still here, but he pretty much told me, I guess, like after me, that he's no longer going to seek therapy. And because he's just tired of explaining his story every single time, which I get. It can be frustrating having to repeat yourself and share things with a new person every single time. But so yeah, I personally never had that experience. But if I do, I guess I would know how to take it. I want to go. I want to go. So yeah, but I think it's interesting when clients when they say that, because it's like it kind of puts me in a spot like, okay, well, what can I do to make you not feel this way, or what, like in my head I think like, okay, so what did they do that I can do differently? So yeah.
That's a really good point, Ngazi. Um, Oftentimes, we are very optimistic that we can make changes, and we should be optimistic because we can make changes. But it's important as therapists that we remain realistic. That it is true. We are probably not the first one, and we probably are not going to be the last one to hear the client's story. And in those instances, it's important that we strive to give them the best quality experiences, however long we have them. And that kind of does go back to, okay, how can we give them the best experience if, say, we are not taking proper care? So, even just remembering that we want to try to give them, the best experience. Unfortunately, we can't really undo like what's happened in the past, and we also like have no idea what's going to happen in the future.
I agree.
Brittany, do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say I've definitely been on both sides of that. Um, both having unfortunate, not necessarily just unfortunate experiences, but the lack of connection, as Ngozi was saying, and kind of going through different practitioners that, um, and it was mainly during childhood, and I believe that therapy during childhood is totally different from therapy as an adult. Um, so kind of you get less of a choice, and you're kind of just told to go somewhere. And if you feel that the practitioner either isn't listening, or you feel that they're kind of taking your parents' side, it can definitely lose a lot of trust in that process. Um, or if maybe promises are made, and in cases that I'm seeing with clients that I have, where either promises are met, or there has even been discussions where HIPAA has been breached, especially with when they were younger in treatment, so when they were minors. So kind of I can see both sides of the coin, having been through it, and having had some clients who express these struggles. And kind of like Ngozi was saying is, and I add that into my intake process to kind of figure out what previous therapeutic experiences occurred, what may have been helpful, what may not have been helpful, and what I can do as a therapist to help make the client as comfortable as possible moving forward.
Wow, I really like that, Brittany. Thank you for opening up when you didn't have to, but I appreciate you saying that you're right. People will remember their therapeutic experiences, and it's important that we know what have they experienced? What did they like? What they didn't like? Um, so that we can really cater to their needs and not make it kind of this like cookie cutter, like, okay, everyone gets CBT, everyone gets 12 sessions, intake, treatment plan, discharge. So that actually leads me to my next question. And bear with me if I'm asking a lot of questions, trying to have this great discussion and have it keep going. I'm wondering if you guys have learned any particular self-care tips here at your experience at Larty, or if you haven't, what types of trainings do you think we should ask Frank to maybe let us take as a group?
I've definitely learned quite a few tips through the training, mainly through kind of research and then sharing through supervision, different tips as far as self-care to share with clients, which I've been trying on myself. A lot of mindfulness. Um, there are a lot of mindfulness activities that have been helpful. But I also believe that creating either like a little video or a um, kind of an activity for exploration of the self-care that you feel you need and the different areas of wellness um, could also be helpful, or kind of access to that kind of activity.
Yeah, I definitely think mindfulness is a really powerful tool. Um, it kind of feels cliche sometimes, like, oh, just be mindful. But I feel like in our current time where we're still struggling and we don't say have all of our normal resources, mindfulness is something that we have, say, the power from within. Courtney or Ngazi, do you have any self-care tips or trainings or any of that sort that you have received here at Larty, or something that you would like to see?
The tips that I've learned, I'm actually going to give credit to Brittany for that. In terms of again the mindfulness and just being aware of your surroundings, enjoying the space that you're in, recognizing certain things. I know when we did our depression group, we focused on that a lot, and that was one of the activities that she presented. Um, and since then, I've definitely been utilizing that and other tips that she has been sharing, and it's been very helpful for me. And I also try to incorporate it as well in my own one-on-one sessions with my clients. So yeah, thanks, Brittany.
Honestly, I can say the same thing. Mindfulness is definitely something that was brought to my attention more since being at Larty. And when we did our group, it was an activity that Brittany did do, which I have used with clients as well. So thank you for that. But in terms of something that I would want to see, I guess so like some of my clients would say, oh, they don't know how to, I guess, when it comes to like meditation, which I guess is part of mindfulness, but like they're like, I don't know where to start, how to begin. How do you stay focused within like the 5 minutes or the 3 minutes or whatever. So I guess something in terms of that, like on how we can utilize some sort of meditation with our clients, that would be helpful. I mean, Google and YouTube is always the way to go, but to actually, have someone who is like really educated on that, explain, on how to go about that would be really helpful, and yeah, would be great.
You're right. Mindfulness and meditation are uh, very similar, but it does have its subtle differences. And when thinking about what you said, Ngazi, I actually didn't have an answer. I was hoping you guys would have an answer. So I am thinking I would want to ask Frank for like maybe like a staff retreat, but if that's like not possible or too expensive, maybe like a staff like yoga workshop, maybe like focused on self-care for practitioners. I'm kind of thinking of like if you guys have ever taken like a trauma informed uh yoga class, it feels a little different than like your traditional yoga class.
I actually really, really like that idea. I think that would be great for everyone to kind of just come together and do something that's part of, self-care and being able to unwind. And yeah, I think that'd be a really cool idea. If we could do that, that'd be great.
I do too, not only for like learning purposes and things like that, but honestly, me in particular, I've never done yoga period before. So I think it'll be something fun to do. Definitely.
Brittany, did you have anything to add to this topic before we begin to wrap up?
I like the ideas that you presented. I think that they're great ways to help expose people to different techniques that they may be able to then either um, pursue further training to utilize in their sessions, or even just utilize on their own time and receive the benefits. Um, and I like how you pointed out different methodologies there. So kind of a physical way as well as a mental escape in a way, two different ways to attack a problem, which could be helpful.
Well, thank you, Brittany. Um, I think now I'm going to start going through everyone's profile on our website to see who's yoga certified and be like, hey, do you want to do a session of some sort? Or maybe if you guys know of any like community partners that we could connect with, kind of like, hey, if you teach us a free session, we can give your clients a free session, something, maybe to kind of create that partnership and such. Or we could also wing it and just go on YouTube ourselves and just go to the park near one of the offices and then just start doing yoga in the middle of the field. So as I wrap up, does anyone have any further comments or any other thoughts they wanted to share?
I don't have any questions or anything. Excuse the noise in the background. I'm printing something, but no questions. But I did enjoy this morning's topic that we spoke about. I think it's definitely something that we should continue to focus on and that we definitely should continue to talk about, especially amongst the rest of the counselors that are part of Latte as well, just to get their thoughts on the topic as well. But I enjoyed it. I really did. And hopefully once Frank, or if Frank reviews this meeting that we had this morning, hopefully he'll, take some of the ideas that we came up with or that we discussed and put those into effect.
I agree with Courtney. This was definitely a very enjoyable session, an enjoyable topic, a very important topic. And I don't have any questions, but I think that just a final note that I've kind of learned along my journey is that the techniques don't work for everybody. So constant exploration of yourself, your needs, your preferences, what really helps you is kind of most important through that versus what everybody else says is right. So kind of going off of what feels best for you is very important in the self-care.
Thank you, Brittany, for that final thought. That's very true. I think that when we cater to our needs, we then are able to better help our clients and help them be able to do that for themselves. So don't want to tire you guys out, so we'll end a little early. I'll let Frank know that we had a very extensive conversation, and thank you guys for chatting with me this morning, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You as well. It was nice seeing everybody.
So see you guys. Well, I guess we'll all see each other in the meeting in a few.
Oh yes, hour and a half, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right.